Are your joints clicking, popping, or refusing to move? We expect some aches and stiffness in midlife, but frozen shoulders, clicking wrists, or fingers that lock, that's a surprise. So there's a few symptoms that I get asked about quite a lot. That there's not a lot of information out there, and a lot of people don't actually associate them with the hormonal changes that go on in the menopause. So number one, we're looking at frozen shoulder. I get asked an awful lot about this one, and very often it's not really associated with the menopause. So what happens is that the capsule around the shoulder joint tightens and it becomes really inflamed and sore and maybe hot as well. So before, say yesterday, you could move your shoulder easily, you could brush your hair, you could reach up to things, you could do your bra up. Suddenly, everything changes and it becomes really painful and very difficult to maneuver into position. So the reason for this is the hormonal changes. So as estrogen drops, the connective tissue around the joint loses flexibility, and this increases your risk of pushing things too far and ending up with a frozen shoulder. So in the perimenopause and menopause, this tends to develop very slowly. So it's not something that comes on suddenly. It does resolve, but very often it's a very slow process. And in the meantime, you have to keep using the joint every single day. Number two is clicking or popping joints. You may find that if you do a lot of typing, suddenly your finger joints are starting to click. You might find if you've been sitting for a while and you stand up, your hip or your knees suddenly go pop. Now, these are not normally signs of damage. It's just the changes that are going on with tendon tension. Now, tendons are strands of fibrous tissue that connect muscle to the joint. And as you can imagine, these tendons need to be really flexible. If you think about your elbow joint, all the different directions it can go in. So if these tendons start shortening and getting drier, it's going to have a huge impact on your flexibility and also the behavior of the joints. And this is where the kind of popping and clicking sounds that comes in. As I say, normally it's not an issue, but sometimes there may be a little bit of pain, a little bit of swelling, and obviously for that you need to get it checked out from your doctor. But otherwise, it's basically just one of those things that's a bit of a nuisance. Number three is trigger finger or thumb. So you may find that you're doing something and suddenly you can't move your finger. You know, you might be picking up a cup of tea, you might be holding a pen, and suddenly everything just locks into place. And then in a minute or so, it just pops back out again. So again, this is to do with the tendons. They can become more inflamed and the hormonal changes will dry and shorten the tendons as well. And it just means that the joints lose their flexibility and get stuck on a regular basis. Number four, bursitis. Bursae are little sacs of fluid that sit between the joints. So they cushion the joint and they stop the bones from each side of the joint rubbing together and causing a lot of pain. But in the perimenopause and menopause, the sacs can become irritated more easily. They can shrink. Basically, the fluid in the sac starts to dry out. So they become more inflamed. The joints can then end up rubbing together, and that can cause a lot of pain. This tends to be very localized, so you may find that it's just one joint. It might be the knee, it might be the elbow, it might be your finger joints, and it tends to be localized rather than all over the body. Number five, we've got tendonitis, and I know this was something that I developed in the menopause, which was, took quite a while to get this sorted out. So again, the tendons, if they get stretched, if they get irritated, if they get inflamed, they can take quite a long time to heal. So this tends to be things like the elbows, the shoulders. I know for me it was actually my wrist and thumb joint that got affected, which was made it really difficult to pick things up. Luckily, it was in my left hand, so it didn't affect my writing at all. But it can be things, it can get really painful, say lifting things, going up and down stairs. If you do a lot of typing, that kind of thing, it's not a comfortable one to have at all. So what can you do to help these things? We're talking about movement, just very gentle movement. You don't want to irritate the joint, you don't want to cause any more pain, but doing maybe just gentle stretching exercises, and very kind of low tension, low impact cardio, just to keep the joints supple and less prone. So this, in a way, is something you can do as a preventative. At the minute you're hitting the perimenopause and the menopause, is to start doing these things so you're going to be less prone to ending up with all these things in the first place. Stretching every day is absolutely great, first thing in the morning, and then a little bit before you go to bed. There's loads of fabulous stretching routines that you can find on YouTube. Remember to eat well and hydrate, because a lot of these symptoms, especially things like the tendonitis and bursitis, dehydration plays a really big part too. So remember to keep up the water. Use anti-inflammatory foods, have plenty of them in your diet. So that's things like oily fish, or if you're not keen on fish, you could go with a fish oil supplement. Lots of different fruits, leafy greens, your nuts and seeds. Take plenty of protein. Your protein needs go up as you go further through the menopause. And we know that muscle wastage or sarcopenia is really common. Muscles, good muscles, will protect and stabilize your joints and prevent a lot of this from happening as well. So it's really important to keep your protein needs up on a daily basis, preferably a little bit with each meal. Professional help, so that would be things like physiotherapy or maybe even a chiropractor, so they can figure out exactly what's going on with the joints. They can offer you treatment and also a nice exercise program that's going to help you along the way. Supplement support. Vitamin D and calcium are really important for bone health. You don't want the joints to start having problems as well. So keep your vitamin D up, your calcium, collagen support as well. So you can get lots of different collagen supplements. If you're not vegetarian or vegan, I always take a beef bone broth powder. You just put it in things like, you can have it as a drink, you can put it in things like soup or other things that you're making. And I find that really helpful for me. If you're vegetarian or vegan, you can get plant-based collagen supplements as well. So it's worth looking into these too. Herbal supplements and support, you can look at arnica gel. I found that absolutely great for my thumb when all of that was going on. It's really good for localized symptoms, so the small joints and things like your knees as well. For general muscle aches and pains, you've got the herb Devil's Claw. There's also supplements such as turmeric and ginger, which are anti-inflammatory. But remember, if things don't improve with all these things that you can do, if the pain starts getting worse, if it starts getting constant, if you find that you're having to take pain medication on a daily basis, that's the point where you need to check with your doctor just to make sure there's nothing else going on with the joints. I hope you found this one helpful. Joint pain it's such a huge area to cover, so I've just done a little bit today. Again, I love to hear your stories. What did you find help you? What happened to your joints? Was there anything in particular that really made a difference for you? Have a lovely week, and I'll see you soon.